Hello! Today we'll be looking at what's in this exciting box from BetaFPV, but just before we get into that, a quick reminder, please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it, comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that bell icon, click on it, just because, see what happens. What's this? Well, you're going to think it's going to be one of these. This is the BetaFPV LiteRadio 2, but this is the BetaFPV LiteRadio 2 SE Special Edition. What is the difference? Well, let's get it out of the box and I will show you. And if we take a look at the box, there are some instructions. There is, in this plasticky packaging, this card and this radio. And yeah, this radio looks almost exactly the same as the first one. The big difference is the initial one, the regular, used a USB micro. This uses a USB Type-C, but it goes further than that. If we look on the new one, the SE, the battery compartment, we'll see there's nothing there. But if we turn it on, it powers on. It's got an inbuilt 1000 milliamp hour lithium battery somewhere in the gubbins. Whereas this one, we have the original, a 2S battery linked on a balance port in order to make it go. And I was always a bit sus about having a regular LiPo battery here, and sure enough, this was the original, and one of these cells is completely dead. And I'm not saying it's coming up with a low voltage, it's just not there anymore. So the original battery has died. Let's see if this one lasts a bit longer. So there are a few other differences with this new radio, one of which they've slightly upped the transmission power. The first one was at 80 milliwatts, this is 100 milliwatts now. We've also got an extra protocol. The original one did FreeSky FCC on D16, FreeSky LBT on D16 and D8. This does the same but also adds in Futaba FHSS. There's also a Bayang version of each of the controllers. So with that inbuilt 1000 milliamp hour battery, they reckon you can get 8 hours out of this one, and with this 350 milliamp hour for the original, this they reckon you got about 3 hours. Now the last thing, and is this a step forward or not, the original here was based on a version of OpenTX. And I say a version because it was a version that BetaFPV forked away from the original and did its very own custom copy of OpenTX Companion, and it wasn't very easy to set up. Obviously there's no screen or anything. On the second one they've dispersed with that and they're calling it the customized LiteRadio system in order to work it. So it's got its own sort of calibration system. There's no PC version of the software to sort things out. And my only initial thoughts is like, how am I going to sort out things like endpoints and subtrms and things like that? I guess we'll find out. So let's go into close-up and see exactly what we can do with it and how it all works. Okay, here's the radio in close-up. There's not too much to look at. Sticks feel okay. It's a little bit tight, the throttle stick. It's not ratcheted. I just like it a little bit looser. You've got, as before, you've got two position switches and two 3-position switches. And I think last time it was kind of channels 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And it's probably something similar here. Now, as before, you have to watch for the flashing light as you turn on. Now, you're looking for flashes before the little tune sound. So if we look at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 flashes, and then it goes to blue, plays a little tune, and then the red light flashes. Now that 4 flashes means it's on Futaba. I want it on D8, and for that I want 3 flashes. And the way you change this is you hold down the bind button at the bottom as you turn it on, and the flashes should change. So we've got 1 flash there. If we do the same again, that's 2 flashes, and if one more time, that's 3 flashes. Right, so now if I turn it on, 1, 2, 3, then it comes up normally. So that is how you change it, and the LED has some functions. Blue means it's normal, and if I was to turn this off, if I was to have the throttle active, for example, turn it on again, then you see it goes to red because it thinks the throttle's active. So if you ever had that and the throttle was down, you'd need to recalibrate, but normally it should be blue. The only other time you should see that red LED is if you were charging, and to charge you just have the radio off, you'd plug in, you'd get the red LED, and once it finished charging it would go off. If you wanted to bind this to a model, you would hold down the bind button after it's been powered up, and you should get a rapidly flashing light, which looks like that. It doesn't stay on for that long, so it's best to have your model ready and then it goes off again. Now I'll come to calibration, I think, when we look at what happens after we've attached this to a quad. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is the use of a simulator. And it's one of the problems I found. I'm a Mac user, and when I plug this in to my Mac via USB-C, my mouse went crazy. At first I thought my mouse had gone wrong, and then I unplugged this and it's fine. I had a bit of a look, and it seems like this has the HID information, so my operating system thinks it's a mouse, and it can't make sense of these, and thus it was going crazy. And this felt to me a little bit like what the old DaVinci firmware did. There was a problem where this would happen on Mac. Didn't happen on PC, if you're running Windows. So I'll show you what that looks like. And again, to plug into a Windows PC, you turn it on normally, you get the blue LED, and that's when it's ready to plug in as a sim joystick. Then it's a case of literally just plugging it in again. You get this slight little different tinge to it, almost like it's a purpley thing. What you're looking at here is my very old and nasty Windows 10 PC, which is pretty old, and it took me about 3 hours just to strip enough stuff off this thing so it would actually work. And as you can see, you plug it in, it pretty much works fine as a joystick. It took me a little bit of setting up. Nothing was quite configured correctly, and some of the stuff came out wrong, so I've sorted this out. You'll notice the pitch was wrong, the yaw was wrong, and if we go over to the advanced setup, 4 and 5 there you'll see are normal, and it's just a little bit weird that the other two switches came a little bit in a weird place. They are axis 11 and 12, which is just a bit weird as far as radio goes. Normally they're all in a row there, but obviously something quite different has gone on between the firmware in this radio versus the last one, which was OpenTX, and a lot more understandable, but this is doing its own thing. So what I thought I'd do next is bind up to this little guy. This is the little Eachine UZ65. This uses D8, and as soon as I bind to that, I can plug this into Betaflight and I can see what the axes look like, and I can see if our subtrim and endpoints are good, and if we need to do a calibration and what that will do, because I'm interested to know, because we haven't got any individual control. So let's see what happens. Okay, so let's plug this guy in, and what I did, I went away and I did a bind on it using the RX bind command, but it's like this isn't really about that, so I don't really want to dwell on that one. So I've got Betaflight up here, and you'll have to excuse if the camera's a bit shaky. It's kind of resting on me at the moment. So I'm just going to connect to Betaflight and go into the receiver. And yeah, quite to my surprise, the center points are really good. They're smack bang on 1500, and they go back to there quite nicely. So I guess the question is, what if you didn't have that? And I notice I can go... Oh, I got a bit too close there. And I notice if I go to the end, I'm at 2004,992, so that's not quite right. We could do better than that. And will the calibration actually do anything about that? So I thought, let's do the calibration and see what happens. So what you have to do is you press up. You get these two beeps. The idea is you put your sticks centered, and once you've done that, you hit it again. And then you get the dit, 3 bips, and then you're supposed to move it at each beep. And it said go around twice. Like that. And press it again, you get 1 beep, and you should be done. So, where are we? We're at the 1500s, and we're still at the 2004,992. So yeah, it kind of, that resets the center points, but it doesn't necessarily sort out your endpoints, but that's easier to do in another way, so let's do that now. And if you've never had to do this, and you probably haven't for a while, the way to do it is to look at the range it gets for each channel. So we're getting 992, I'm just taking a note of this, to 2004. Is that consistent? And then I'm getting 994 to 2006. Throttle is 992 to 2004. And yaw is 996 to 2006. If you go over in CLI, so the RX range command, it's kind of what's expected of it. So if we tell it what our range is, so for 0 it is 992 to 2004, and that looks a little bit different. If we quickly save that, 1000 at the bottom, 2000 at the top, 1500 in the middle. So let me update the rest of those quick. So if we now look where we are, our roll, pitch and yaw are sitting nicely at 1500. If I go down, we go to 1000, to 2000, pitch 2000, 1000, yaw 1001, 2001, that's slightly out, I could do that again. Throttle is a little bit out, I can go back and just redo that one. But you get the gist, and of course I can put on an RC, it's already got an RC deadband of 3, and I can put on one that reflects it. But I'll go and just refine that until I get something a little bit more consistent. And then let's have a quick fly at it, see how it feels to actually fly something with. And so off we go for a little bit of a zip round the house, and there's really not much to say about this clip. The only thing I was having a quick look at, apart from the fact that my battery voltage seems to be dropping alarmingly fast, is the RSSI, which is generally quite low on these little SPI receivers. I wanted to make sure it didn't look anything out of the ordinary, and it looked fine. My main feeling was how rusty I felt in general. I haven't flown certainly anything outside in weeks and months, and even inside I only did like a couple of batteries a couple of weeks ago to test out something else. So yeah, I'm feeling rusty. I can certainly feel the difference in that throttle stick. As you know, it was a case of as I went along, I kind of got used to how it felt. The general feel of it, which is very much like a game controller, and that's the controller I'm very comfortable with, I do like. That feels absolutely fine. So no problems there, and yeah, it seemed to do the job. There was no drift on the sticks or anything, so fairly happy with that one. So let's bring this in for my usual textbook landing by bashing into my knee and then attempting to land on my arm and failing. So this did okay, it performed alright. As I said, that stick's a little bit stiffer than my norm, so it just takes a couple of batteries just to get used to the idea that your thumb has to push a bit harder. But other than that, fairly good, fairly simple. And it worked okay. It'd be interesting, should lockdown ever finish, to see how far we can go. Can we use this for a sort of general model? Because this has got more transmit power than previously, you know, and we're only looking for about 500 meters. If that's successful, then you could say, you know, this is a good radio for that. Obviously, I'm a bit disappointed being a Mac user. I can't simply plug it in, have it charge, and me use my SIM while I'm doing stuff. I did get back to BetaFPV and say, hey, this doesn't work on my Mac. Any solutions, or did you know about this? Didn't get a response, and I tried several of the guys I normally speak to via things like Facebook Messenger. Still not got a response, which kind of leads me to another question. When I reviewed the goggles previously, I got a lot of feedback about people that said I wouldn't order from BetaFPV. They'd been burnt by it. Now it's always interesting to get feedback about people, because you sometimes think, well, is it only people that have a bad experience that report back? And that's often the case. Like, people just expect a good experience. They expect to put their money down, get their item and be hassle free, but they don't go on about that. Of course, if a company does something wrong and they don't put it right, then people like to tell people about that. So I'm interested to know, what do you think of BetaFPV as a company, whether your experience is good or bad? I'm really interested to know if they're coming across overall as okay or overall as bad, and I'll be happy to feed that back to them should they ever speak to me again. As for this radio, it's okay. I can imagine this is going to be a bit of a bundle. Those cheap goggles I reviewed last time on one of their quads, and I think it's certainly easier to set up than the sort of dodgy OpenTX version of last time. just given the amount of people that emailed me and said they screwed up their radio, can I send them the original firmware back? As long as that calibration brings those center sticks back to 1500 USEC, then you can just use the RX range command and you're good for Betaflight. And I quite like the built-in battery, that's pretty good too. I think this main problem with this one, and I really like the form factor, is things like the Jumper T-Lite coming out for just a bit more money, which has a screen, which has model memories, which has like a 4-in-1 unit. This will look a little bit useless in comparison, because yeah, this is cheap. The Jumper T-Lite is a little bit more expensive, but it seems to do a lot more and has a screen. I haven't got one, I don't know how it performs, but it certainly looks to business. So bear that in mind if you're looking for a cheap radio. If you've just got like one quad and you're going to stay with one quad, then this is fine. If you're going to expand, then you may need something that's going to do a bit more. Anyway, this has been the BetaFPV LiteRadio 2 SE Special Edition, kindly supplied for review by BetaFPV. And of course there's links down below for where you can check this out if you want to take a look in more detail. Hope that's been helpful. I'll catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.